The Spotlight, shining a light on podcasts and videos that have caught our attention.
Hi, and welcome to The Spotlight. My name is Jen Spiker, and today I'll continue highlighting a recent conversation from Vision's weekend program, Real Faith. When Sara David made a trip to Papua New Guinea in 2012, she learned about a woman who died shortly after giving birth because she didn't have access to quality health care. This inspired Sara to get involved. Today, we'll hear more of Eric Skattebo's conversation with Sara, who shared how God went before her as she launched a ministry called Living Child.
The Spotlight with Jen Spiker.
I mean, it was just incredible how it all happened. This person could fill in the Constitution. This person could set up a website. That person had a friend who knew how to do a logo, and they did some drawings, and they even came up with the name, Living Child.
Now, I was going to say, you wanted to help, but did you imagine that you would have to start your own ministry with all the complications that are involved with fundraising, et cetera, et cetera?
No.
You didn't know anything about all that?
No.
You just wanted to help?
I did not have a clue. And in fact, I'd reached out to quite a few of the other organisations, but none of them were working in that area of East Sepik province.
So that would have been easy. You could have just kind of piggybacked on existing ministries.
Totally. And I was put in touch with the head honcho. Amazingly, I was put in touch with this guy who's the, main obstetric advisor for obstetrics and midwifery in Papua New Guinea. Mm-hmm. He's an Australian guy, but he's lived and worked in PNG for more than 40 years. Mm-hmm. And he said to me, Sara, that province where you are, we call it the poison chalice. Nothing ever works there.
Oh, wow. Talk about a challenge. Oh, my goodness. How did that make you feel?
Like, oh, my goodness.
Wow.
And then it went to, Angouram, the district of Angouram. Oh, Angouram. Well, that's the worst district in the province.
You're just picking one challenge after another.
it was worse and worse and worse. And I was just thinking, but Lord, you are the God who can do the impossible. Mm-hmm. And you're the God who cares for the widows, and you care for the most marginalized and vulnerable communities. Mm-hmm. And I just kept being reminded of the stories, especially in Moses, and of Moses and the Hebrews and how they were that oppressed nation, and all those miracles that happened in those times in the Old Testament stories. God kept reminding me of those. And, because I kept saying to God, but Lord, I'm only a midwife, but Lord, I'm this, I'm just a mother, I'm just this. And he would just keep reminding me, but Sara. And so I thought, okay, all right, Lord, well, I can trust you. And you are the King of Kings. You are the Lord of Lords. You're above all governments and authorities. Mm-hmm. I will trust you. Mm-hmm. And I had to just keep putting my trust in him. And so we planned our next trip. And so amazingly, God connected me to this woman who had been to Papua New Guinea as a midwife, had a real heart for midwifery, and she came, and another friend of mine and Mike, and we went again 9 months later after the first trip.
9 months, that seems to be a common theme here.
I know, it just happened that way.
Wow.
And we went on our second trip. Now, the first trip, everything went smoothly. The boat arrived on time. The vehicle was on time. The boat was on time. We got where we needed to be on time. There was a warm welcome. Now, the second trip, they wanted us to go to this village that was even further away.
Oh.
And there was a health facility that had been closed for many, many years. And it had been built by Church of Christ missionaries who were from Perth. Can you believe it?
Wow.
And it was even named after one of the hospitals here in Perth. It was called the Bethesda House Sick, after Bethesda Hospital. Before that trip, I was just a little bit worried. I started to become a little bit worried about, evil, about the demonic, whereas I'd never really been worried about that before. And I was sitting next to this man in my church, and he turned to me and he said, this old man, and he said, "Oh, Sarah, I see that you're going to Bunam in PNG next month." And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Well," he said, "I used to be a missionary pilot for MAF, and I used to fly around that area. I know that area very well." And I couldn't believe it. I said, "I don't believe that." And he said, "Yes." He said, "You should go and talk to the first missionary there. His name is John and his wife is Joyce." I said, "Are they still alive?" And he said, "Yes, and they're living down in Mandurah." So he put me in touch with them, and I went and visited them. And they told me the story of how Christianity had come to that place, to Bunam.
Wow. Yeah.
And they were the first missionaries to do that. And I just said to him once, I just said, "John, I'm sort of, what about demons and things like that?" And he said, "Sarah," he said, "it's very real, and you really see it in Papua New Guinea because there's it's an animistic society."
Yeah.
But he said, "Just remember that the spirit lives in you is greater than that which is in the world."
Amen.
And he said, "The Papua New Guinean people, the Christians there, they know, he said, they'll say to you, 'Oh, there's a demon running up a tree,' or whatever." He said, "They've got incredible stories to tell, but he said, you've got nothing to worry about." And they prayed for me and went on that second trip. And when we arrived in that village, there was no welcome. It was quite an unkept village, and we could just feel and sense evil in that area.
Would you call it like spiritual or demonic oppression? Would you describe it that way?
Yes. There was just this like a darkness. I don't know how else to describe it, but we just felt that. And then the church people told us that there was a witch doctor in that area, and he had the keys to the health center. When we saw the health facility, there were nails in it. He had slammed it shut. There were just sick people everywhere. Every kid
he nailed
that we
it
saw, shut. He nailed it
shut. So he was against you guys coming?
He was against any health services there. There'd been a lot of fear.
Now, why would he be against it? What's his deal?
I think it was power and control.
Oh, okay.
He had control. And so what happened is that there were still being medicines delivered, but he would receive those medicines and then he would dispense them as part of his.
Oh, I got it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what was happening.
So if you guys come and suddenly people aren't dependent on him anymore, he has less control.
He loses income. Yeah. Loses income, loses control. And
so it's just good old-fashioned greed.
Yeah,
in a sense.
Yeah.
Greed and selfishness.
It is. Yes, greed, selfishness, power and control,
Yeah.
And everyone was sort of under his spell. Like they couldn't do anything without, him.
So what'd you do?
Well, Mike, Pastor Mike, he said, "Right, let's pray." So
it's a spiritual battle, so that makes sense.
We got together and we had the elders of the village and of the church. They all came. This guy didn't come, the sorcerer, they called him. His name was Bob.
His name was Bob.
His name was Bob.
Of all the names for a witch doctor, that was not the first one that would come to my mind.
I know.
Bob the witch doctor.
So he came and anyway, they prayed, and it was a really powerful time of prayer. I'd never experienced that before, and just saying, the presence of God is here now, and light is here. The light of Christ, the light of Jesus, the risen Jesus. We are here now. And just telling the evil to leave this place and that it had no place, and to invite Jesus and for healing and health. So that was in the morning. And then one man spoke up and he said, I'll go and get the key. And so they got the key. Bob reluctantly gave him the key and they opened up the health facility. So the village elders felt empowered to then go and get the key. Because we said, well, we're here, we've come a long way, so we want to open up this health facility. So they pulled out the nails and opened the doors, and we just went in there and we said, right, let's clean up this place. I mean, it was a mess. It was dusty, it was dirty, but there were boxes of medicine.
Oh.
And we found like there were IV fluids, intravenous fluids. There were intravenous cannulas so that you can give an antibiotic straight into the vein. And there were antibiotics. And I mean, at the time,
all this medicine that could help people wasn't being used.
It wasn't being
because
used.
of one greedy, selfish guy.
Yes. And because the doors were open, all of a sudden, all these people started to come in. And there were so many children who were sick with malaria. I mean, they had temperatures of 44 degrees. I mean, it was really scary.
Yeah.
But we had antimalarials to give them. There was a man who came and his hand was just this big swollen mass of pus. And we had the intravenous cannulas, we had the IV antibiotics that we could give him. He came back several days. We just gave him antibiotics 3 times a day. We had another man come to us and he had this big slash across his face. And the midwife who was with me, she said, well, I'm good at suturing up after a woman's given birth. I've never done it on the face before, but I'm willing to give it a go.
Wow.
And she was able to clean the wound and sew him up. And so we literally worked from morning until night and giving out medicines and treatment.
Yeah.
And that was the beginning of building up this relationship with the community to bring, not only the gospel of Jesus and that he is the light and his perfect love drives away fear, but also bringing healing to the bodies, of the children and the women. And the closing, at the end of that week, so we did all this training with the village birth attendants, we did all this, clinical work. And then the final night, they had this big celebration, everyone coming together. And the women and the children that we had seen in the clinic that were so sick, they were all dancing and singing praise and worship to God. Now, I'd grown up in quite a, conservative church environment.
Yeah.
And I saw these women dancing and these children just absolutely praising Jesus. And I just thought, I can't sit still. I've got to get up. And that was my first experience of sort of getting up and even lifting my hands to praise God and dancing to praise and thank God for what he had done in that village. It was incredible.
On the Spotlight, we've been listening to part of a conversation between Eric Skattebo and Sara David on Real Faith. If you want to hear the series of interviews Eric did with Sara, tap the podcast tab in the Free Vision app and search for Real Faith and the 4 episodes titled Sara David. There are plenty more fascinating Real Faith stories to enjoy in the app too. My name is Jen Spiker. Join me next time on The Spotlight as I share another podcast or video that deserves highlighting.
For more great podcasts and videos like the one featured today, check out vision.org.au or the Free Vision app.